I am studying for the New York City Department of Building Site Safety Manager exam, and part of the studying requires me to review the 1968 Building Code. So I'm looking at Volume 2. I left off with Reference Standard 10, Structural Work, and I'm on to Reference Standard 11, Foundations. And as you can see, there's 2 pages. And I'm looking to see, when we're referring to foundations, I'm assuming it is the base of a building structure. You have RS 11 foundations. RS 11-1, method for sieve. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Analysis of fine and coarse aggregates. RS 11-2, test method for material finer than 75 sieve in material aggregates. Reference standard RS 11-3, test methods. Method of test for the moisture density relations of soil and soil aggregate mixtures using 10-pound rammer and an 18-inch drop. RS 11-3A, standard test method for moisture content of soil and soil aggregate in place by nuclear methods. Reference standard 11-4, standard for the preservation treatment of poles by pressure processes. Reference standard RS 11-5, specs and dimensions, I would say DIMS, for wood poles. In case I say that, you'll know what I'm talking about. RS 11-6, standard. This is all about timber products, pressure processes. RS 11-7, standard specs for round timber piles. And it looks like the last one is RS 11-8, standard spec for welded and seamless pipe piles. Moving on to reference standard 12, light, head, ventilation, and noise requirements. This is a quick chapter with only 2. RS 12, light, heat, ventilation, and noise control. Looks like HVAC. A lot of airborne sound level meters. RS 12-1, heating. Talks about heating capacity. HVAC systems. Reference standard 12-2, sound transmission class ratings. (12-3), impact noise ratings. 12-4, noise criterion levels. And it looks like there's other references to, like another book. 12-5, test procedures for sound power level. 12-6, specs for sound level meters and supplement. You have some ANSI references too. American National Standards Institute, I believe that's the acronym. Reference standard 12-7, engineering methods for the determination of sound power level of noise sources for field-free conditions over a reflecting plane. 12-8, preferred frequencies and band numbers for acoustical measurements. 12-9, specs for octave band and fractional octave band analog and digital filters. And the last one in this section, 12-10, proceeding on motion of the Commission as to the insulation standards. Alright, we left off with Standard 12. Let's check out Standard 13, mechanical ventilation, air conditioning. Where the hell did it go? and refrigeration systems. This one has 28 pages. And this is all about RS-13, mechanical ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration systems. RS-13-1, more standards for air conditioning and ventilation. Looks like some definitions. Some HVAC definitions. And HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, in case for some reason you're not certain. I assume everyone knows what that is. Sometimes I laugh when I talk to people. They think I'm speaking a different language, and I forget that it's not always obvious. We got RS-13-2, exhaust for cooking spaces. RS-13-3, standard for the install of equipment for the removal of smoke and grease-laden vapors from commercial cooking. You got some NFPA references, which is National Fire Protection Association or agency. Fire is very important. Prevention thereof. Did we skip? Not certain, but we're winging this. RS-13-5, standard for the installation of blower and exhaust systems for dust, stock, and vapor removal or conveying. RS-13-6. It's giving some references. It's much of the same. Some scope and definitions and building occupancy classifications. Installation restrictions. Some subsections. Design. It's amazing that they had this written back in the 60s. I'm sure they were ahead of their time. 13-7, standard for refrigerant containing components and accessories. 13-8, standard for refrigeration and air conditioning, condensing, and compressor units. 13-9, limit controls. 13-10, standard for primary safety controls for gas and oil-fired appliances. 1311A, standard for central cooling air conditioners. 1311B, field test procedures for large mechanical liquid chilling units. There's some tables. There's some polarity and uninsulated live parts, dead metal parts. 1312, room air conditioners. 1313, standard for heat pumps. 1314, standard for fan coil units and room fan heater units. 1315, standard for test performance of air filter units. And it looks like the last section is 1316, standard for dry chemical exhausting systems. HVAC is its own world, which is really cool. Control work is very cool too. It's amazing what we're able to accomplish when you really drill down and you look at the details. Moving on from mechanical ventilation, air, AC, and refrigeration to heating and combustion equipment. We have 14 pages on that. We have RS 14, heating and combustion equipment. You have some references, some ANSI references. Yeah, RS 14.1, standard for the install of warm air heating and air conditioning systems. Heating and cooling, basically. Non-combustible, condensers, air cooling equipment, wiring, electrical wiring, fan control. 14.2, National Fuel Gas Code. 14.3, standard for install of oil burning equipment. 14.4, boiler and pressure vessel code. And that is as well as for 14-5A. Water fuel cutoff. 14-5B, electric heating, water supply, and power boilers. 14.6, looks like a whole plethora of ANSI references pertaining to section content. A whole lot. 14.7, specs for refractories of incinerators and boilers. 14.8, castable refractories. 14.9, incinerators and boiler specs. 14.10, mineral fiber block and board thermal installation specs. 14.11, method of test for surface burning characteristics of building materials. 14.12, specs for fuel oil. 14.13, method of test for flash point. 14.14, specs on ground fire clay mortar for laying fire clay brick. We have 14.15, this minimum install for heat production equipment chart. Everything from boilers to radiators to ranges. 14.16, minimum clearances for equipment using specified forms of protection. Oh, they got asbestos, of course, which is no longer allowed to be used, and a great pain to have to and cost to have to remove. I messed with it a lot when I was an apprentice, not really realizing the magnitude of what I was doing. RS 14-17, minimum equipment foundation mounting requirements, combustible construction. More asbestos reference. Looks like the last page here, 14.18, standard for chimneys, fireplaces, vents, and solid fuel burning appliances. 14.19, standard for factory-built fireplaces. 14.20, standard for fireplace stoves. 14.21, standard for room heaters, solid fuel type. Reference standard 14.22, fibrous glass duct construction, HVAC, dust construction standards, flex, metal. And that looks like that's it for that. I will go with 15 next, because I think we only have to go up to 19 with the appendix later.